To God be the glory. Today is a great day to celebrate the Lord. He is wonderful. He is awesome. He is our God. He's God Almighty. So I pray everyone day is going well and that God is so let me see here. All right. This is first of all, welcome to KMB's Corner Kingdom and Businesses Corner. We are on the 10th teaching on positioning. And gonna wrap this up soon. To God be the glory. To go on to the next lesson. But getting to where we need to be. We have had 3 different definitions of positioning. So positioning is a situation, this is the third one. Positioning is a situation or set of circumstances, especially one that affects one's power to act. Well, according to Colossians 2:15 from the Amplified Classic Bible, God disarmed the principalities and powers that were arranged against us. So God Himself affected the power that Satan once had against us. So Jesus went in and took back everything that Satan could have used against us. Uh, so yeah, God did that for us. He affected the power that the enemy once had. He took over. God disarmed the principalities and power that were ranged against us and made a bold display and public example of them in triumphing over them in Him and in it the cross. So God did everything we needed that needed to be done. He did everything. Then He handed it over to His body, to His church. his body, and told us to operate until he comes. There is nothing that the enemy could actually do to us. He's a defeated foe. Now he's gonna come and try to manipulate us into thinking that we don't have we to manipulate us to keep us from operating in our authority, but he don't have the power to do it. We have been given and granted the power of God and authority. And God, when Jesus rose, he brought us with him and seated him at the right hand of the Father. So we are above all wicked spirit in high places, anything. We are above all of it. All what God wants us to do is operate in it. He did never said that. Well, matter of fact, God told him, you're going to go through tribulation. You're going to be persecuted, but you already won. You're victorious. We just got to believe that. I'm going to get back to the lesson. You got to believe that you are the victorious one. And the more I was spending time with God, he was sharing some things with me again about the checkpoints. Uh, we understand checkpoint is a control point along the stages where participants must pass through, and their passage is recorded. It ensures competitors follow their designated route and do not take shortcuts. Well, that's what God does for us. God, there are checkpoints in our lives that we're supposed to meet at a specific timing, and we're supposed to pass through. And the recording is being recorded and get us ready. Once we get to the the checkpoint, the function of the checkpoint, it verifies that runners are following the course and allow the time tracking by recording when a runner passed through. So when God look at us, there are times when we are supposed to have been further along. We did not meet those checkpoints in a timely manner that was God ordained. Although God wanted us to be there at a certain time, we still can get to those checkpoints. But what happened is we caused delays in our lives. God positioned us in the earth for a specific timing, and in our journey, we have assignments, and those assignments we're supposed to have fulfilled in a timing. Not all of them, because we're still moving. But there's a timing. Certain things supposed to have been already. We're supposed to have already uh, conquered. We're supposed to have already did those things and moved on as God was moving us. But if you don't get to those checkpoints, then God can't move you any further. Some of us, personally, I turned 49, and I had to go to God about some things because within myself, I'm like, God, I'm not shaken, I'm not disturbed by it, but within myself, I know I'm supposed to be further along. Because as soon as I turned 49, a few days later, after rejoicing and giving glory to God, I was spending time with God, and there was in my spirit as if you're supposed to be further along. There's some things that you procrastinated, you put off that was tied to the plan, and you haven't met those, you haven't arrived yet in some of those things. And what happened is God can't take us any further, even though we're on this journey. He needs us to continue on, and so he can. And there's a specific time for some things. And I'm gonna tell you, in this, there are specific locations at checkpoints. Checkpoints have specific locations. We're supposed to do things at a specific timing in a particular at a particular location in our lives at those checkpoints, and some of us never did meet them. We never did get to them. We've been running this race for a long time, and some of us have not gotten to those checkpoints that God needed us to get to, and it's vital. When you get a chance, go look up checkpoints in a marathon. And when God gave me this the other day when I was walking, I was like, wow. I was talking to him about positioning and about some more things, and he dropped this in my spirit, checkpoints. And I was like, what is that about? So I went and looked it up, and it was like, wow. See, God used simple things. He don't. God's not too hard so that you can't understand him. He would give us simple things. So when I went on, God said there's locations we're supposed to have been met had went to those locations and been went past the checkpoints, but because we didn't, it it held up some things. We held up some things, and God cannot give us things that was for is for a certain time in our lives when we hadn't gotten there yet. Those things, the blessings are still there. The things God, the promises of God that He have told us are still there. When He told us to do things, when He gave us assignments, the blessings are tied to the assignments, to the plan. And when you don't reach those checkpoints, then the blessings are still there. You just haven't gotten to the place where those blessings can overtake you. You can quote scripture all you want, and yes, we believe and we have faith for it, but we have to become doers of the word, not just hear. When God tell us something, we got to move. Trust God and move. And trusting God is not always just going out doing it the next day. It's making preparations. So, and location checkpoints are usually faced at regular intervals along the marathon route, including the halfway point. Like I told you, in a marathon there is a start and there is a end. So we have to continue to stay with God. Now, at the checkpoint, there are also supplies. And we're still talking about positioning. It's just that we need to understand in positioning, God is still moving us. We're not to stay in one place. He's still ordering our steps. And we have to be obedient. So supplies uh, may be offered at the checkpoint. God, we refresh, we revive. Sometimes, we say it's seasons. We use it as seasonal. Sometimes we're just resting, and then God is supplying us. We're reviving. We're being refreshed, and then God is saying, "Okay, now it's time to get back on the journey. I'm moving you on along." And what we have to do, we have to get up and go until we reach the next checkpoint. But if we don't ever, even if we don't ever get up and go, then that's what we hold up everything, not God. We're holding up things not only for ourselves, but for other people who are depending on us. And at a checkpoint, some people disqualify themselves. Now we have to understand God would never disqualify us because He qualified us. But when we're not moving along according to His plan, the plans that He ordained, according to His will and His way, what we do is we can disqualify ourselves, but God never disqualify us. We would disqualify ourselves. And what I mean is there are certain things for a certain time and to be done in the earth. And if you were supposed to be en route at that time to get to that checkpoint to get those assignments taken care of, but you didn't get them taken care of, then you don't get a do-over because it was for a specific time. And when you don't meet it at that specific timing, some things we can't redo. So we have to we have to go back to God and get further instructions so He can keep us en route on to the next assignment. But there's something you have said in yourself, I can only go back and redo that. Some people are on the earth for us to go back and redo some things. So that in that we cause ourselves some hold up. So once again, God don't disqualify us, but we can disqualify ourselves. And I can tell you this: when God doesn't disqualify us, we can disqualify ourselves by not obeying God's instructions and directions. Also, there are times when some assignments are only for a particular time in the earth. Look at Israel. Israel turned an 11-day trip into 40 years, which resulted in a large cemetery in the wilderness. because the originals did not go into the promised land, although it was promised to them. God did not stop them from going into the promised land. They stopped themselves from going into the promised land. They got to a checkpoint and they wouldn't go any further. 11-day trip, which is vital. Checkpoints are vital in our lives because it gives us a time to refresh, revive, renew ourselves, and then we move on. But they stayed at that checkpoint and would not move any further, and they died out. The original Israelites died out. They did not enter the promised land because of their choice. So they disqualified themselves for to enter into the promised land. So I'm going to get on back to where I was yesterday. God just give me more and more. When God give it to me, I'm going to give it to you. Now, I'm going to get back to where I was yesterday. Remember the checkpoints when God told me all this plays a part of being positioned in the earth. We need to understand. There was a time we was kids. We went to school. There was a time we went to school. There was a time we kept moving. God orders the steps of his own because he knows his purpose for every one of us. Jeremiah 1:5 teaches us, before I shaped you in the womb, I knew you intimately. So God said, I knew you in a way nobody else knew you. I knew you in a way you don't even know yourself. I knew you because I put you there. I designed you. I destined you. And I knew you intimately. I had a personal relationship with you. I had divine plans for you before I gave you life. God had divine, not in old plans, but divine plans. He had for us before he even gave us life and set us apart and chose us to be his. We are not, we have to get with God and find out what it is and what we're supposed to be doing. Even now, we need to go back to God. And God told you something a while ago. You went and you don't feel like you have gotten to, I hadn't fulfilled what God told you to. You need to go back to ask God, did I get out course somewhere? Because I haven't met this checkpoint yet. And we find ourselves struggling when we don't know what to do. So we need to check in with God. And this should be a day-to-day check-in also. But we check in and say, hey, am I still in the right place? Am I still en route? So although God knows the purpose, he has to protect the plan from our immaturity. We are immature in some areas. And we have to trust God blindly because we haven't arrived in that place for God to reveal details to us about the next step yet. Sometimes we might start off and God might not tell us nothing because God said you're too immature. You can't handle it yet. So we can't handle it yet. But anyway, God wants us to mature. So then he can relate the information to us that we need to succeed on this side. Because God is tired of his people limiting themselves. He's not doing it. It's too many lazy people in the body of Christ. And we don't, just be honest, sometimes we just don't want to do the work. And we have regrets because we didn't fulfill certain things in our lives. And God's saying, now I need you to mature so you can continue out the plans that I had from the beginning. He's not going to change his mind. He just needs us to line up. We have to blindly trust God leading, just know his plan is leading. He's leading us into success. Ecclesiastes 3:9 teaches us, what do people get from all their hard work? I went over this yesterday. I'm just going to go through it. And what do we get for all our hard work? Now, at the end of the finish line, at the end of I'm going to put it like this. When we have met certain things at the end of every checkpoint, what do we get for all our hard work? Well, let's look at the story of Joseph. When we read the end of it, it's like, man, Joseph was really blessed. Joseph was really blessed. Joseph, Pharaoh continued, I am placing you in charge of all of Egypt. Then he removed his signet ring, placed it on Joseph's finger, and had him clothed with fine linen robes, uh, adorned him with a golden collar around his neck. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh. No one in all of Egypt will lift a finger without your permission. See, when Joseph got there, he is like, arrived. Now I can reap the fruit of my labor. That's what he got for all his hard work. God would never put anything. If God planned it, He said, "I have equipped you to walk it out," and He equipped Joseph to walk it out. But Joseph could not complete the assignment where he was in his daddy's house. So Joseph had to. God had to get him to Israel. God started position. He positioned Joseph from the beginning when He birthed him through his mother, and when his father took them to where they was when they was they was in a place that Joseph would have never fulfilled his purpose if he had stayed in his father's house. I hope that makes sense. He would have never became second in command to Pharaoh if he had been in his father's house, in Jacob's house. Uh, so we must understand when we look at things, God said, I have, according to Jeremiah 29, he had plans for us. Not plans not to harm us, but to give us a future, expected future. And that's a different translation from the King James version. But anyway, to go on, he said, I have holy plans for you. And in those plans, he said, I don't intend to harm you. And he don't. God does not harm us. That's why He don't give us anything before time. That's why He knows us intimately what we can handle, and He knows when we have to be obedient in order to handle what's next. So Joseph could not become second in commandment in Jacob's house, and he could not. He would not have been able to help the famine in Jacob's house. So because we read the end story, the end story, the end game, he's blessed. But when it started out, it's like, oh my goodness, they did so much horrible things to Joseph. His brothers are ashamed, and they said, which they should have. But when God is positioning us, we don't always get to say how He positioned us or what is going to happen in the positioning. We just got to know God is with us. Once again, when God told me to do something, I said, God, this is too big for me. He said, it's not. He said, you're right, it's not, but it's not too big for me. But when He told me, I said, okay, God, okay. I said, are you with me? And I heard Him just from within, clear as day, I'm with you. And we can start a thing, but we can get so tired in the midst that we stop. God don't need us to stop. Because when we stop, we hold up things, not just for ourselves, but for our families and others. Other people are depending on us. So Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh's, king of Egypt. Leaving Pharaoh's presence, Joseph traveled throughout the entire land of Egypt. Joseph would have never been able to do that if he had still been in Jacob's house. Now, did Joseph enjoy being positioned? No. And we understand. He did not enjoy being positioned. What had he done to deserve what was going to happen that had happened to him? But Joseph's story is my goodness, it inspires me. You can learn a lot just by reading the Word of God. Ecclesiastes 3 and 10 says, I have seen the burden God has placed on all of us. We've all been given assignment, and we have to know what that word means, burden. It means refers to work, struggles, and constant searching for meaning that defines our life. King Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes acknowledges that this burden is not arbitrary, but part of God's design. It drives people to reflect on their place in creation and their dependence on God. So that's a we even the world, they deal with the same thing. They have to come to the realization that to reflect on their place in creation and that they need God. Even if they deny, they still know that there is a God. So after the and I read this yesterday. So it looked like Joseph had been burning down, but it was for God, even though God positioned him, it was for his the way God had for him to get to Egypt. After the Ishmaelites traders brought Joseph down to Egypt, he was purchased by an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, whose name was Potiphar. Yahweh was present with Joseph, and he became successful while living in the house of the Egyptian master. Now, Potiphar was a general in the army of the Lord. He was a leader. He wasn't just any old body. He was a leader. Joseph got educated in Egypt, being in Pharaoh's house. He was not in the field. He was in the house. He was taking care of everything that Potiphar would have to do by being the head of his house. But he had someone who can do those things for him. And in the meantime, Joseph was getting educated. He was getting an education that he wouldn't have got in his father's house. He learned how to read, write, handle things, and he was up under a leader. So being under a leader, what do them? You learn how to be a leader. Although he was already ordained by God to be a leader, we still have to walk it out in the natural. We have to get educated. We have to get training. We have to discipline ourselves. We have to do everything we need to do to protect the plan, to be successful in the plan. And it's not going to happen just because we want it to happen. So Joseph got a good education in the house of Potiphar that he would have never got in Jacob's house. So we can see God doing things in Joseph's life if we pay close enough attention. And if we don't look at and pity Joseph when we're reading, because he actually got a chance of a lifetime to represent God well and to be and not only for Egypt, but for all the nations. He became a help for all the nations. But he had to get position. And we might not like how God is doing things because we don't understand the whole plan of God. So we don't focus on the test. We have to keep moving with God. We might get in some difficulties, but make sure God is leading. He wants to know weapons are formed against God's plan for us. There are opposition that's going to come against our knowledge of God and the plans of God to try to stop us, deter us from being successful in the earth, not for ourselves, but to glorify God, where people can see God is the living God is alive and well, and He is faithful and He's trustworthy. Whatever He say, He shall do it. But what we have to do is allow Him to do it through us. Yet, and then we see here come the enemy. Although he's doing great work, Potiphar trusting with everything, putting everything in his hand. No, he's a good man. So here come the enemy. Weapons are formed to stop the plan. But God is still positioning us, even when it don't feel good, even when it goes against everything. We don't want to have no part of it. But God said, "I need you in it. I need you in it. You said use you. Now I need you in it because I designed you for this. I purpose you for this. You're going to glorify me in this." It's also the weapon was formed. Yet day after day, Potiphar's wife was determined to seduce Joseph. But now what was good for Joseph is he was brought up in his father's house. He knew the way of the Lord, so he grew up knowing this is wrong. So that was the good thing, that he knew God. He knew the living God. And he knew God was with him, and he wanted to honor God. So that was a benefit. God will put us in families. God will put us in ministries to get our teaching and training. So on our in our when he's positioning us in different places, whether it's in the business world, music world, sports world, whatever, we count on the train. We count on what we know. Who we know God, and we know what is not of God. So now that although she tried to seduce him, he knew that if he did this, he would dishonor God first of all, and then his master, and then his father Joseph, Jacob, because he grew up knowing better. So day after day, she was determined to seduce him because the enemy was trying to stop the plan of God from being fulfilled. Although he didn't understand, he didn't know it, but he was trying to stop it. He didn't know the details. So, but Joseph continually refused her advances and would not even go near her. So it's up. See, he wouldn't go near her because if he had did it, Joseph could have got himself in trouble. It's up to us if the enemy plans prosper. It's up to us if the enemy plans prosper, and it's also up to us if God plans are fulfilled in our lives. So it's we have to make a choice. Is I'm gonna trust God in this, even though it don't feel good. I'm sick of this situation. I'm tired of these things coming against me, but I'm gonna rejoice in the Lord through it all. We got to stay with God. So there was a plan formed against him, but he had to continue to trust God. And because he trusted God and he valued God, he rejected her and she lied on him. When his, and this coming from Genesis 39, 19 through 21. When his master heard his wife account about how his servant had treated her, he became furious. He didn't even start thinking. He wasn't even thinking. This is a person I trusted, and I have never had a complaint only from my wife, but he became furious. So Joseph's master took him and threw him into prison, the place where the kings, and when he threw him into prison, you know that's a place where people are forgotten. In that day and time, if you were thrown into prison, it wasn't a good prison like in our modern day society. Oh, that people don't mind going to prison now, but back then you wouldn't want to be in prison because these was the people they said could not was untrainable. They had no value, they had no worth. Put them there, and they was put there. Majority of them was put there to die. But we saw one come out. We saw some come out also. So Joseph master took him and threw him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners was confined. The king's prisoners were confined, and we talking about somebody young put into a place where there are people who have done all sorts of things, who the king prisoners, people who was not able to be to live in, let's say, society at that moment. Uh, so he was put there young, had done nothing at all, but God was still positioning him, and God was still training him. So, and he was left there, but Yahweh was with him and demonstrated to him his faithful love by giving him great favor in the sight of the warden. So now he's still, even though he put in a place, even though the enemy is trying to stop the plan, God is still have positioned Joseph. Now I'm going to give you a greater test than you had in Potiphar's house. Now I'm going to give you a greater test because right here you're dealing with people who are reprobated mind, have done violent things. They are hard to live in society, so they have been tossed away. And now I'm positioning you, I'm favoring you. Now I'm giving you a harder test to shape you, to condition you, to bring out the potentials that's already in you, the leader that's in you. He didn't just come a leader when he got to Pharaoh's palace. God had positioned him in Potiphar's house and now in the prison, and he is a leader in some of the worst situations in his life. The leader is coming out of him. The person who can handle business is coming out of him. The person who uh, can set things in a correct order to help mold people back so they can now go live in society. So the place where the king prisoners was confined, and he was left there. But Yahweh was with Joseph and demonstrated to him his faithful love by giving him great favor in the sight of the warren. See, God has conditioned us in some places that are so uncomfortable to us, but if we will rejoice in the places we are instead of concentrating on this is not comfortable, but rejoice in the Lord and enjoy what we are, it'll be easier on us. What makes it hard is we don't want to be in places that is God has placed us and is good for us. And because it's not easy, we have to trust God, and that's what God wants us to depend on him. So he favored Joseph, and Joseph saw the favor of God, and he still honored God by being obedient to his training in his father's house by getting to know God. And then he went to Potiphar's house and he got a education that he wouldn't have got in his father's house. He got to do see things, learn things, like I said, read, write, things he wouldn't have got in his father's house and Jacob's house. But he's getting here because God is conditioning him to continue to move him on to where he's destined to be. People, we think we can, and here's the thing. We understand that in the midst of this, Pharaoh, his baker and I think it's his wine barrel, his baker was sent to prison, and there was dreams, and Joseph interpreted those dreams. God was using him, so here is someone that can do this, something that is most people can't do, and he gave them he interpreted their dreams. So in the midst, Joseph had told the wine barrel, cup barrel, to not forget him. Remember me. But what happened? When we do things for people and we're trusting that they will tell people about us because I did these things for them and they know I'm good at this. We're trusting them that they're going to tell people about us. What happened? People you think you can count on will forget about you. But the chief butler forgot Joseph in the prison. Although Joseph had did this is something that should have been fresh on his mind, but people forget. So Joseph, for 2 more years, was still being conditioned for what he was about to walk into. Now, at this time, God stepped in because God said he has now gotten to the place. He has now gotten to the place where he can go in and operate where I destined him to be. He was forgotten about for 2 years, and sometimes people what God has positioned us, sometimes we think God then forgot about us. We be like, God, but I have learned to rejoice in the Lord. Now I ask God, hey, that's where I'm supposed to be. And if God say yes, now I rejoice in where I'm at. I have to learn how to adapt to become better, improve in my natural abilities to be a help in the plans of God. So what do? I adjust, I study, I read, I do whatever is needed to help sharpen my skills because I know when it's time to move, then I will be skillful here. I will have gotten all I can get here. So when after 2 years, now it was time, God intervened and said, it's time for you to get to the place that I destined you to be. It's time for you to reap the fruit of your labor, to live out the goodness of God. So yet God made everything look, and so there's come a time when even though the chief butler forgot him, we all know that he had a dream. He had a dream. I don't want to go before time. Let me make sure. Just want to make sure. We know he had a dream. Pharaoh had a dream. God caused Pharaoh to have a dream. And when he went to sleep, and God caused him to have another dream, which he knew it meant something. But the people that Pharaoh trusted to be able to help him couldn't help him. But there was one that could help him. And in the midst of that, then the butler remembered him. Then the butler remembered him after 2 full years. You know, day by day, you would have thought the butler would have had something, thought about Joseph in some way, but it was a at that moment it was Joseph's designated place for 2 more years. And then God said, I haven't forgotten about you, Joseph. Now I'm going to take you into what? Now I'm going to take you into your purpose and destiny. Your destiny for my purpose. So we need to understand, yet God made, when we go back to Ecclesiastes, we have to understand God made everything beautiful for its own timing. You can want out, you can want God to do, and you can get yourself in trouble if you try to move before God. So that we have to remember, Ecclesiastes teaches us, yet God made everything beautiful in its own timing. So now, after 2 full years, after 2 full years, the word reads, and in those days Pharaoh dreamed 2 dreams in one night concerning a famine which was to be in all the land. And he awoke from his sleep and called all the interpreters of dreams that were in Egypt and told them his 2 dreams, and they were not able to declare them. Why? Because God is some things can't nobody get. They can't nobody touch a God but God and who He allow. There's some things people you think people can help you with, they can't. God, even though they have done it, they have done things, they are known for things, but there comes a certain time, can't nobody help you in this. God got people already ordained to come and help in a situation where nobody else can help you. God, I have every detail planned out. Believe Him. Trust Him. As I'm talking to you, I'm talking to me. Because I'm telling you, this is why this teaching, God keeps giving more to this teaching. Because I'm waking up every morning talking to God about things. And God is telling me about things. And He brings out more details. Although He gave me a lot of scriptures before, a lot of notes before, and I took them down. But He's bringing out more because I go in daily. I check in. So it's gonna be some people you think can help you, guys. Nope, they can't help you. They can't help. I don't care what they did before. I don't care what they known for. They can't help you. I got the one who can help you. He said, I got my man. I got my chosen one. And this is all part of the plan. Because he's on his way. I'm positioning him to take a place that he would have never got to in his father's house. So I had to bring him somewhere. Was uncomfortable. He was in a strange land amongst a strange language. And guess what? He learned that language. In Potiphar's house, in the prison, he was still learning. And he learned other languages. So he was continuing to get educated. Because remember, he was not just going to be dealing with Israel. He was not just going to be dealing with Egypt. He was not just going to be dealing with Israel. He was going to be dealing with other nations who spoke other languages. And one thing you have to understand, Joseph was learning other languages in Potiphar's house and in the prison. He wasn't just in the prison, just doing what they told him to do. He was actually learning, becoming more skillful for what he was going into. And see, that's what we have to do. When it seems like nothing's going on, it seems like we at a standstill, like, what, God, you forgot about me? Adjust yourself. Read books. Spend more time with God. Practice the presence of God. Some people don't know how to, they don't know God's presence, but practice the presence of God. Learn some things that is going to be beneficial for you, and God can use it because God was not giving Joseph a top education, getting him trained because he was going to have to deal with other nations and he was going to have to know other languages besides uh, the language of Israel and the language of Egypt. See, take this time. When you think, oh, what am I? Where am I? I'm in a place where I'm educating myself more and more in things that God's going to be able to use according to the plan. I'm just not doing stuff. I'm getting educated along with the plan. And there are other things that God's going to be able to use. I'm becoming skillful. I'm observing more. So, so, and then the chief butler remembered Joseph and spake of him to the king. Now, y'all know y'all been in situations, and all of a sudden, out of all these years, things came back to your remembrance right then. Right then, something came back to your remembrance. Like, man, I forgot about that. Why did I forget about that? Because now it's the time for it to be used. God make everything beautiful in His time. When God, you're operating according to God's plan, believe me, He's going to use what you have became skillful in the timing. Joseph wasn't a slacker in the prison. He was a prisoner himself, but he wasn't a slacker. He was doing great things in a place where nobody wanted to be. And then the chief butler remembered Joseph and spake of him to the king. He has, and see what God is saying now. We know we're destined for great things. We know we're supposed to be doing more. We know God only, I don't care what it looked like. God only gives us divine plans, divine purposes, and it all lines up with His will for what He designed from the beginning. Every one of us is vital to the plan, in His plan, in His master plan. Every one of us is vital. Nobody is small in God. So, what God does is, Joseph from the beginning had dreams that showed him something that he didn't understand. He was destined to be great in the palace. So, although he didn't understand it then, when he gets to that place, he's going to understand it more and more. Now, this is why I had them dreams. So, God put that in Joseph, those dreams, and gave him those dreams. And the reason I say this is because God have given you things. God have had people speak into your life. God have spoken into your life Himself in your individual life and told you things uh, that other people might be jealous of, that other people might not like it. But God said, this is what I have for you. And what He does is He plants eternity into the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's works from beginning to end. Joseph had no way of knowing of what was going on. He, in the beginning, he probably was confused. What have I done? Why is this happening to me? But he did not speak out of it. In the going through, in all that he was going through, he never spoke out against his brothers who had put him in that sold him into slavery. He never spoke out against Potiphar, who had believed his wife lied, because if he had started complaining, God would have to check him. We see throughout the word where anytime someone started complaining according to God's plan, God would check them. So God never checked Joseph. So Joseph wasn't complaining about why he was there. He was learning. We do too much complaining when God has us in certain places instead of becoming skillful in learning and rejoicing. So God has planted eternity into the human heart, but we need to realize, even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. God will start us off and tell us some things, but He won't tell us no, He won't tell you how you're gonna get there, because if He tell you how you're gonna get you there, you might bag out. But then sometimes God will show us the end game, and the end game is beautiful, And we be ready, God. Oh, yeah, God said that. I'm ready for that. But am I going through? God, you didn't tell me this. You, I don't know. And some of us say the wrong things. I don't know how I'm gonna make it through this, but I have learned to say what God say. I say what God say in every situation. I can do all things through Christ who strengthened Christ Jesus who strengthened me. I can do all things. Whatever God tell me to do, I can do it because God said for me to do it. And you know what? It took time for me to do that. To really understand, I can do what God requires me to do. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm coming back tomorrow because normally I don't teach on Friday, but I'm gonna do this on Friday and Saturday because I'm gonna post the teaching out. And tomorrow is, man, the lesson is great. Uh, So he has planned eternal. So God have he never give us the whole scope of what he's doing. The only one who knew exactly what they came to the earth for and why they was leaving was Jesus. Jesus knew the whole time he came to die. He knew why he came. He prepared to die. It didn't phase him because he knew. But God knew we could not handle everything. So he had to give it to us in bits and pieces and expect us to follow him in his decisions, in his planning. And Joseph, remember, Joseph was 17. So God don't give us all details. At 17, Joseph was 17 when they took him down into the land of Egypt. And he was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh. Man, know all of his 20s away from his family. Being a servant because he was sold into something and he didn't do anything to deserve it. But the outcome of it, God said, I got greater things for you. I'm going to give you the fruit of your labor. It was not in vain. So, and Joseph was 17 years old when they took him down into Egypt. So God don't give us the whole scope of his plan from detail to detail. We just have to follow him, trust him. We don't depend on ourselves in here. Because if it was us, we can't do it. But God in us, it's already done. I tell myself it's already done. And then I have to be a doer of what I'm confessing. We confess, that's good. But God needs us to be a doer of what we're confessing. So when God had to talk to me, I like God, I don't get Lord, just get me out of here. God said, but I need you in it. The people who are dependent on you, Brenda, need you in it. I position you here for my will and for my purpose. And I need you to complete this assignment so I can move you to where I need you to be at. But until this part is completed, until you decide, because see, this is the thing. God said, now I've told you to plan. I've told you what I want you to do. Now you got to decide, make the choice to do it. Because God needs us in the places he needs us. He needs us more than in just the four walls. He needs us in positions that he can then operate through us. The same thing we're praying to him about. We need us in those positions that he's putting us in. So when we pray to him, that and then he can work through us to get it done. But until we get in the positions, we are crying out to God, and we're the ones out of position. God needs us beyond the four walls. He has the four walls for us to go in, to assemble ourselves, to get our teaching and training, to get refilled, to so we can go back out and be a service and do what needs to be done in the earth. We have a responsibility to the earth, and we need to be positioned so we can help. So we can say, "Use me, Lord," and we say that until the pressure comes. And God said, "Now I position you." Persecution, opposition, it's gonna come. But I have placed you here, and I know you're the one who can do it because I designed you for it. So God needs us to trust him. And if you want to be used by God, don't think it's just gonna be in them for well, some people have parked their cars and limit themselves. Bottom line, you limit yourself because that's all you see. And then you go back outside the four walls and do whatever you want to do. That's not God. Your personal life belongs to God. Your day-to-day life belongs to God. That's why we present ourselves as living sacrifices. so we can fulfill what he needs us to do on a day-to-day basis. Our feelings have nothing to do with our assignments. We need to learn how to actually master our feelings. Be not moved by our feelings. So there are times God said we miss it because we're not in the right place at the right time. And he said through his word, there's a timing and there's a place that we're supposed to be in the earth. So the things that God wants us to have at that timing is going to go to that location. And if you're not in that location, guess what? You missed it. The opportunity that God gave you was missed because you was not obedient to get to that place. And then you want to get to a place that you think is going to please God. And God said, I don't even want you over here. I have nothing to do with that. That is your leading and your following you. But I have positioned you in a certain place, whether it's a ministry, a home, a ministry, a business, a corporation, politics, whatever arena of whatever world, whether it's business, sports, medicine, uh, law. I mean, it is so many places that God need us. He need his people in all these arenas. God don't have a problem with musicians. God just don't want people to go be do things that goes against him. God don't have a problem with you using your gifts and talents in the world for his glory. That's why he put them in you. So your gifts will make room for you, but you got to become skillful in them. You got to become skillful in them. So God don't have a problem with that, but he's positioning us, and we need to hit the checkpoints every time because there are things that was right there at a specific time for us that God wanted us to have, but we were somewhere else and we didn't get it. But God just said you were going to do this. I said I did, but you wasn't there. Proverbs 16 and 3 teaches us, before you do anything, put your trust totally in God and not in yourself. In every plan you make will succeed. Because here's the thing, the plans you make are going to line up with the plans God have already made. You're not going to put your plans over God's plans. You're going to examine your plans off of whatever God said, then you plan it. But if you don't go to God and find out what the plans are, or if you ignore the plans of God because you want to do something else, you would not be. You can be successful, but it won't be God will, and it's gonna cost you more than it's gonna help you. Ask the man who got all the money and no family. Ask the person who got rich at all costs and don't have no relationships with people because he burnt bridges and he did people wrong to get to the top. Ask that person who is so successful but can't even enjoy what they have in life. It'll cost you. Your plans will cost you, but God's plan will bless you and prosper you because he's positioning us. We have to start in our local government. You can't plan for to be the president if you never got into politics on a lower level of politics. Whether it's a alderman, a city councilman, whatever, start there. If God told you he wants you in the arena of politics to be a politician, ain't all politicians bad. But the reason they're bad because most of them are worldly. And they doing it, they taking bribes and they doing all kinds of things. But God said, you would listen to me. You would not go and run for that position. So I could have used you, and the people's in your area could have got help through you because you listen to me. But you want me to do things to worldly people who don't even know me, who deny me. And that's why you said politicians are bad. But get in the race. Get in God's race. I only campaign Jesus, but I know God worked through man to get things done in the earth. So I'm going to end here. If God had told Joseph the details of the plans, he would not have agreed. Just as you and I would not agree if God gave us the detailed plans. But when he shows us the end game, he tell us the end game, we be like, oh yeah, God, use me, God, use me. But then when he put us in it, And the pressure is pressuring us and it's weighing down on us. That's the minute God get me out of this, get me out of this. God said, no, I need you in it. Your household needs you in it. The people that are waiting on you need you in it. God needed Jesus. Look, Jesus had to stay in it because all of us, the whole world was dependent on Jesus' obedience, and he did not disappoint. But with that being said, I'll keep getting phone calls. So I'm gonna until tomorrow. You enjoy your day.